Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is season 2, episode 24, the Levelland UFO Case. Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into an incident that really, in the blink of an eye, turned this quiet prairie town in rural Texas. Well, it turned it into the epicenter of one of the most credible mass UFO sightings in American history. We're talking about Levelland, Texas. It's a place, back then, only about 10,000 people. And on one fateful night in 1957, you had multiple independent witnesses who didn't just see something truly inexplicable. They were directly affected by it.
Yeah, that's what's truly fascinating here. It's not just the individual stories. I mean, they're compelling enough on their own, but it's the sheer volume and the striking consistency of these reports. They just cascaded into the local police department over a really short period. This wasn't just one person seeing something strange. It was a real wave of encounters that, frankly, profoundly challenged the authorities and researchers too.
Absolutely. And our mission for you today is to really unpack those reports meticulously. We want to explore the official explanations that came later and get into the heated debates that have kept this whole enigma alive for decades. We'll try and help you dissect what exactly went down on those bewildering nights in Levelland. So, let's set the scene. It all kicks off on the evening of November 2nd, 1957, Levelland, Texas. Picture it. Flat, wide-open prairie country west of Lubbock, right there on the Texas South Plains. Just a quiet, pretty unassuming place.
And the timing, like you said, is important. This was definitely a period when, public interest in unidentified flying objects was certainly heightened a few years after that initial UFO craze, late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
But Levelland quickly carved out its own unique spot in UFO lore, mainly because of the sheer number of people affected and the direct, almost undeniable impact these things had on their cars. It went way beyond just seeing something weird in the sky.
Right. So the first really baffling call to the Levelland police comes from two immigrant farm workers, Pedro Salcedo and Joe Salaz. They're just driving 4 miles west of town, minding their own business, when, bam, they see this brilliant blue flash. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Their truck's engine just died completely, instantly, left them stranded there in the dark. Then this rocket-shaped object, that's how Salcedo described it, rises up and actually approaches them. Can you imagine the terror? Salcedo, he was so scared he actually jumped out of the truck, hit the dirt, and this object passes directly over their vehicle. He said there was a great sound and rush of wind like thunder making the truck actually rock, and it gave off a lot of heat. And then just as suddenly as it appeared, the object moves off. The second it departed, the truck engine immediately restarted, just like that, working perfectly as if nothing had happened at all.
That immediate engine failure and the restart, directly tied to the object being there and then leaving. It's not just a fascinating detail. It's really a recurring central theme through this whole Levelland thing. It raises a huge question right from the get-go. What kind of phenomenon, known or unknown, could possibly cause such a direct, instantaneous, and temporary effect on something like a truck engine and its electrical system? Officer A.J. Fowler, the guy who took that first call, he later admitted he initially thought it was a joke. Salcedo's story just sounded too wild. But, Officer Fowler's skepticism wasn't going to last long.
No kidding. Because just an hour later, the calls started pouring in. You had motorist Jim Wheeler reporting something equally unsettling. A brilliantly lit, egg-shaped object about 200 feet long, just sitting there blocking the road 4 miles east of Levelland. And guess what? His vehicle died too. Mysteriously. Only restarted when the object took off. See, this wasn't just one guy anymore. The reports kept coming. 10:55 p.m., a married couple driving northeast see a bright flash. Their headlights and radio died. Just for 3 seconds, but still. Then, 5 minutes after that, Jose Alvarez encounters a strange object 11 miles north of Levelland, and yep, his engine died until the object left.
The consistency here is it's compelling. These descriptions of vehicle interference are almost identical. You're talking headlights dimming, going out completely, radios cutting out, engines sputtering and dying, and then, crucially, restarting instantly once the object moves away. This isn't just, people seeing lights they can't explain. These are accounts of direct physical interactions. Reported by multiple separate, independent witnesses spread out geographically, it really points to some kind of shared external cause.
And it didn't stop when the clock struck midnight. It kept going into November 3rd. At 12:05 a.m., a Texas Tech student, Newell Wright, driving 10 miles east of town, his car engine starts to sputter. He sees the ammeter, that little gauge on the dash showing the electrical current. It jumps wildly to discharge, then back to normal, and then the engine just cuts out like it ran out of gas. His car rolls to a stop, headlights dim. Then a few seconds later, they go out completely. He gets out to see what's wrong, and there it is, an immense 100-foot-long egg-shaped object sitting right there in the road ahead of him. It took off, and only then did his engine roar back to life, headlights came back on, everything working fine, just incredible. Meanwhile, Officer Fowler, who'd initially brushed off that first call, his station's phone is ringing off the hook now. He gets reports from Frank Williams at 12:15 a.m., Ronald Martin at 12:45 a.m., James Long at 1:15 a.m. All three reporting strikingly similar things. Brightly glowing objects in or near the road, cars losing power, sometimes stopping dead, and then engines and lights miraculously working again after the object left. This wasn't just a few odd calls anymore. It was clearly a phenomenon happening.
Yeah, by this point, you've got several Levelland police officers actively out there investigating these reports, which are just piling up and sounding incredibly consistent. Among them was Sheriff Weir Clem, and he actually saw something himself, a brilliant red object moving across the sky around 1:30 a.m. So, confirmation from the sheriff himself. And then 1:45 a.m., Levelland's own fire chief, Ray Jones, he also witnessed an object and experienced his vehicle's lights and engine sputtering, just like everyone else was reporting. Officer Fowler, he noted that everybody who called was very excited, you can imagine. In total, the Levelland police got 15 distinct UFO-related reports just during that one night and into the early morning. 15.
15 reports. I mean, that's an extraordinary number for such a small area in such a short time.
Absolutely. And with that kind of unprecedented activity and these consistent, really extraordinary reports from so many people, the Levelland story just blew up, gained national publicity really fast, which inevitably drew the attention of Project Blue Book.
Right. Project Blue Book, for anyone maybe not familiar, that was the official U.S. Air Force group tasked with investigating UFO reports back then from 52 to 69.
Exactly. So the Air Force felt they had to send someone. They dispatched a sergeant down to Levelland who spent, get this, a total of just 7 hours on the ground investigating. 7 hours. And during that quick trip, they interviewed only 3 of the eyewitnesses: Pedro Saucedo, Jim Wheeler, and Newell Wright. Just those 3.
So, okay, based on just those 3 interviews and some info they had about thunderstorms that had apparently been in the area earlier, the Air Force investigator jumped to a conclusion pretty quick. The official explanation: it was all caused by a severe electrical storm. Specifically, they pointed to natural stuff like ball lightning or maybe St. Elmo's fire, and they blamed wet electrical circuits for all the engine problems. Convenient.
Well, that immediately raises a pretty big question, doesn't it? If you've got 15 reports, why focus your whole investigation on interviewing just 3 of the witnesses? It seems like a remarkably narrow scope, For something so widespread and consistent, it really makes you wonder if they could get a full picture that way.
That's a really critical point. And UFO historian Curtis Peebles, when he looked into it, he noted the Air Force said they found only 3 persons who had witnessed the blue light, which kind of ignores all the other descriptions, right? He also pointed out they claimed there was no uniform description of the object. And maybe more controversially, the Air Force apparently decided Pedro Saucedo's account could not be relied upon. Why? Because of his grade school education and what they called a lack of directional concept. Deciding to just discount a key witness based on their education level instead of the consistency or the details, it feels pretty contentious, almost like they were looking for a reason to dismiss it.
And that official conclusion, it got strong backing from some prominent skeptics, notably Donald Menzel, the Harvard astronomer. He was a big UFO skeptic, very influential. And Menzel firmly supported the Air Force line. He argued the atmospheric conditions in Levelland that night were just ideal for the formation of ball lightning. He pointed to freak weather, prior rain, thunderstorms, lightning.
Yeah.
The whole package. It's kind of the classic skeptical approach, right? Find a known, even if it's a rare natural phenomenon, to explain away something unknown.
Yeah, Menzel even claimed pretty dismissively that only the saucer proponents could have converted so trivial a series of events, a few stalled automobiles, balls of flame in the sky at the end of the thunderstorm, into a national mystery. Strong words.
Yeah.
However, even Menzel, the big skeptic, had to admit one thing. He did concede that ball lightning couldn't be absolutely proved as the cause. Because, it's fleeting. It doesn't leave physical evidence. It's an admission, maybe a small one, but it definitely leaves the door open a crack, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
So, okay, the official explanation is out there. Electrical storm, ball lightning, but
Right.
not everyone bought it, not by a long shot. 2 really prominent ufologists, James E. McDonald and J. Allen Hynek, they strongly pushed back against the Air Force theory. They looked at it very differently.
Right. Their core argument was pretty straightforward, actually, and it hit right at the foundation of the Air Force's explanation. They basically said, There was no electrical storm happening in the area when the sightings occurred. Simple as that. McDonald, he was a respected physicist. When he testified before Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives, back in 1968, he stated very clearly there was no lightning or thunderstorm and only a trace of rain at the actual time of the events. That directly contradicts the whole basis for the official conclusion.
And J. Allen Hynek. Now, he's interesting because he was actually working for Project Blue Book at the time. He was their chief scientific consultant, and he was busy tracking Sputnik, the Soviet satellite, which had just launched. Initially, he admitted, hastily concurred with the Air Force's electrical storm explanation, but he said he did it based on bad information he was given about that supposed storm.
Exactly. But Hynek, being a scientist, he later really regretted that quick agreement. He wrote that the storm explanation was shown not to be the case. Observers reported overcast and mist, but no lightning. It really highlights a critical challenge in these kinds of investigations, doesn't it? The danger of relying on bad initial data, even for experts, especially when there's pressure to get an answer out fast. His change of heart, though, that speaks volumes about the evidence once you look closer.
Hynek also pointed out something else, a really crucial detail that seems to have just been glossed over in the official report, something that really undermines the whole ball lightning idea. He said, had I given it any thought whatsoever, I would soon have recognized the absence of any evidence that ball lightning can stop cars and put out headlights. That's a pretty big deal, isn't it? The explanation just doesn't fit the reported effects.
It's a fundamental disconnect, really, between what they said happened and what people reported happening. And on top of that, ufologists like Hynek and McDonald kept pointing out that the Air Force only talked to 3 witnesses out of 15. What about the other 12, including, the sheriff and the fire chief? Their accounts weren't even mentioned, let alone addressed, in Project Blue Book's final report. When you put that all together, it strongly suggests, well, at best, an incomplete investigation. At worst, maybe a biased one. One that was perhaps looking for an easy explanation rather than digging into all the evidence.
Exactly, and that's why the Levelland UFO case, despite that quick official explanation, still fascinates people. It still challenges our understanding. It's the sheer number of independent witnesses, the incredible consistency about the cars dying, and then these strong counter-arguments from respected scientists about the actual weather conditions. It all keeps the mystery alive. It's really a prime example of how this specific night cemented Texas's place as, well, the epicenter of something truly extraordinary and unexplained.
And this case really forces us to think about the complexities, the real difficulties, in trying to investigate unexplained phenomena, especially when there's that, societal or institutional pressure for a quick, neat answer. It's just a powerful example of how different perspectives can shine a light on the gaps in our understanding. And it encourages us, you, the listener, to think more critically about what we accept as fact. The questions Levelland raised, they still hang in the air. How do you reconcile so many consistent reports with explanations that just don't seem to cover all the effects people described? It becomes this fascinating look at belief, official stories, and why some mysteries just persist.
And the fascination hasn't faded either. The media has definitely revisited this story over the years. I remember KDFW in Dallas did a report back in 2002. They even interviewed Sheriff Weir Clem's widow and some friends. So it keeps the memory of this incredible Texas event alive for new people. For you listening now, it's just a perfect example of how one single event can spark this huge, long-standing debate that's still going on. It really invites you to weigh the evidence yourself. So as we wrap up our look at the incredible events in Levelland, where does that leave us? Was it really just some weird weather and atmospheric phenomenon? Or did something else entirely visit the Texas plains that night, leaving behind stalled cars and completely bewildered witnesses? We have to leave you with that puzzle to ponder.
Yeah, the Levelland case is a stark reminder that sometimes the most compelling, the most credible events are the ones that just resist those easy, tidy answers. They force us to kind of push at the boundaries of what we think we know.
That is the end of this episode. Until next time, keep to the shadows. Some legends are best left undiscovered.